Hi, this is Dee, and you're listening to my podcast, Let Me Clear My Throat. It has been about approximately almost a year, a little shy of a year, since I've done my last podcast. And I've had a lot going on in my life since then that has really taken a toll on me in the sense of I've tried to get on here a couple of times and do a podcast, and I would erase it. Or one time I did a full podcast and realized that I didn't record it. And then I did another one that I thought I stopped recording it because it was done, and then in fact it just kept going, and I didn't realize it. And so, needless to say, I'm back. And I want to thank everybody for being there for me and being dedicated and understanding and just being you. And if you follow along in my journey, or if you're just new to my podcast, thank you for being here. I always say that, the biggest thing that you could give somebody in your life, the most precious thing in your life you could give to somebody is your time. And if you give your time to something or someone, that you are taking a part of your life that you're never going to get back and sharing it with someone. And that to me means everything. So I usually at the end of my podcast close out with that remark, but I wanted to begin by saying that. And I know I've talked about wanting to do video podcast, and that I just hadn't been ready for it and didn't have the means and stuff for it, but knowing what to do and this, that, and the other. But I'm going to try my very best to start making video podcast. Just gonna go for it, and trial and error, just like everything else in life. And I would be happy to take any advice or suggestions by anybody, obviously to make it the best that it can be, not only for quality purposes, but also for beneficial purposes on both ends, yours and mine. And so I'm gonna do. I was going to do this one, but I have been through so much this month. I say this month, August has just started, but if you've followed with me or have listened to any of my other podcasts, or even if you haven't, I'll just go ahead and my dad died about a little over 4.5 years ago, and he had a heart attack. I was home from work that day, and thank God I was home from work that day. My mom is blind, and she would have been home by herself. And So, anyway, my dad passed away, and I was a therapist for autistic kids, and I quit my job, left my job to take care of my mother full time, 24/7, full time living in with her and taking care of her. Over the years, my mom conditions, chronic health declined dramatically, and my mom ended up being blind and bedridden. And she was always facing something going on with herself, and just seemed like one thing after another, and could never get a break. And on June 19th of this past June, my mother asked me to take her to the hospital. And the day before that, I was supposed to go, my daughter was going to sit with my mom, and I was going to go to a Godsmack concert. And I ended up giving my tickets to my best friend and her husband, because I didn't feel right going. I didn't feel safe leaving my mom. She just, it just didn't sit right with me. So anyway, I ended up giving my tickets away. I had really good tickets. They were actually in the chairs. I was really excited, but my mom more important, obviously. So And my best friend and her husband deserved it. They deserved good things, and deserved to be able to go and stuff and spend some time like that together. So anyway, that was that Thursday, and on the 18th. Well, first thing in the morning, probably about 5:30 in the morning-ish, on the 19th, my mom had called me in here in her bedroom and had asked me if I would take her to the hospital. She wasn't feeling right. And well, she had told me that the night before as well, that she wasn't feeling right, but she was going to wait to see how she did through the night and everything. So anyway, she wanted her coffee and cookies. She always had coffee and cookies all the time. And so I went and got her coffee and cookies, and then I helped her get dressed because, my mom being bedridden, her abilities to do things was very limited on, being able to get dressed and things. So obviously I helped her get dressed and got her situated and got her finally into the car and got her to the hospital. And we was in the hospital in the county that we live in, and her oxygen was really low. And obviously my mom was on. That was another thing I was fighting here at home too, was her oxygen was getting worse, and so I was increasing her oxygen level and stuff, trying to give her some oxygen and stuff, because her oxygen just kept playing back and forth. And my mom in October of last year was on life support and had problems with her oxygen and her heart rate and stuff, where her blood pressure was real high, and had a big problem. Well, she was on life support for a couple of days and came through very well, and actually was in a lot better shape than she had been in a long time. And she was actually able to do a lot more and have a little bit more energy. But anyway, so we go into the hospital, and they put her on a BiPAP machine because of her oxygen level, trying to make sure that she's getting it all. And her blood count was extremely low. It was like 5. And so she ended up getting a blood transfusion. She had 2 bags of blood, and they said that she was bleeding internally somewhere within. So they transferred us to a different hospital that was more equipped with a better GI department. And so we got transferred to the other hospital, and she had to have a 3rd bag of blood. So they gave her another bag of blood. So now at this time she had 3 bags blood transfusion. It brought her blood, I want to say, up to 7.5. So the doctor came in and was talking to her. My mom was very awake and coherent, very, very awake and coherent, and was talking to her about wanting to do a colonoscopy on her to see if they can find out where she's bleeding from and maybe do an endoscope. But my mom declined the colonoscopy, and she was not strong enough oxygen-wise to do the endoscope. So she was very, she wanted something to eat and something to drink, because she hadn't eaten since the morning, and by this time it was going into the near evening time, late afternoon, early evening. And so the doctor was like, well, I don't see any sense why you should be able to have something to eat or drink now that you're not getting any testing done. I'll go talk to the other doctors, make sure there's nothing they want to do, that's going to end up causing a problem with that, and I'll be right back. And the nurse was like, she had to go do something. And I said, well, Mom, while we're waiting on the doctor and the nurse, I'm going to run home real quick and let my daughter's dog out, because my daughter has a little dog. And I said, I'm going to go let the dog out. And I said, would you like anything from home? And she said, a Sprite. And I said, anything else? And she said, no, that's it. And I was like, okay, which they give you a Sprite at the hospital, but, I was like, okay. So I leave, and I'm not even 5 minutes down the road. And the nurse, my mom had the nurse call me on her phone, on my mom's phone, and my mom's crying and telling me to come back, that she needs me to hurry up and come back. And I was like, what's going on? And she's like, I need you. And I'm like, okay, well, give me a minute. Let me turn around. Give me a minute. I'll be there in a minute. She said, well, a minute might be all I have left. And I was just kind of like, okay, I'm coming, And so I get back to the hospital, and the room is full of people. And they had her on the BiPAP and stuff, and trying to get her to breathe. Now, mind you, my mom is blind. And what really needs to change in the medical system, and well, with society in general too, but mainly the medical system, is there needs to be further acknowledgement and protocols put into place for people that are hearing and visually impaired, that are handicapped, that have impairments of understanding, whatever the case may be. Because my mom being blind, these people were everywhere. Nobody was talking to her and explaining to her what was going on. They were just acting. And there were so many people there. My mother was scared, so scared. And so I come in, and she knows my voice, and I'm calming her down, and I'm talking to her, and I'm trying to get her to breathe through, and try to, calm down, Mom. I'm right here. Let's find out what's going on. And so she is trying to get her oxygen and herself and her bearings and everything, and she's, obviously still very scared, not knowing what's going on. Plus, when you can't breathe, So the doctor comes in, and I'm talking to him, and I'm explaining to him about how my mom was on life support in October, and that she came out of it very fine, and they done that to let her body rest so that she can, get back up to par, and did a lot of testing on her and stuff, and got a lot of fluid off of her. And so the doctor was like, well, that's what we're going to do. He said, that's our next step. We're putting her on life support. So I was like, okay. I said, well, let me tell her, because she's got major PTSD. So I went over there, and I said, Mom, I said, do you remember October, what they did in October? And she nodded. And I said, they're going to have to do that to you again. And she shook her head no. And I said, Mom, we have to do that again. You have to trust me. I said, that's the only way we're going to be able to get you to get your oxygen and stuff. And, and I was trying to explain to her, that was our only alternative, but trying to put it in a gentle way. And I said, it'll be okay, Mom. Trust me. And so she nodded her head. And I said, okay, that's fine. The doctor said, well, let me step in now. He said, I've got it from here. So I walk out of the room to go call, some family and stuff to let them know the update on Mom. And I come back in, and they're putting her central line in and getting her, all prepped and everything. So they put her on life support and took her down to ICU. And I couldn't go back there. None of us could go back there for quite a big while, because they were getting her all set up and everything, getting some testing and stuff done. And so anyway, that was June 19th. And my mom was on life support from June 19th to July 3rd. And I was going, if you're a part of my Facebook, or you follow me on Facebook, I did videos pretty much every day on the progress of my mom, and how she was doing, and the roller coaster up and down, and just not knowing what to do, feeling helpless, and also just letting everybody know how my mom was doing, and just asking for prayers in a big, huge prayer chain. And so many people reached out. I couldn't tell you the number of thousands of people that, kept my mom and all of us in their prayers. And with everything I am, I thank everybody for being there for us through the whole journey. And through everything. I am very strong on prayer, and I believe in the power of prayer. And so I just words can't express, excuse me, on how much that means to me and to my mother. And so July 3rd, well, this whole time they're trying to adjust her oxygen and her PEEP level, the pressure and everything. And at one point in time, she was at 100% of the machine. The machine was doing everything. And then she dropped down and was able to hold her own. And she got down to 35%. The machine was doing 35%. She was doing the rest. Her PEEP level had finally got down to like 8, where before it was like 16. It was like really up there. And she was doing the back and forth, and she could, she was had her sense of humor. The doctors, even though she was still incubated, or however you're supposed to, when she was still, I know I'm not saying it right, intubated. She still had her sense of humor. She was still coherent in the fact that they were very surprised to know that her tolerance level was very, very high. They had her at the max of sedation, and she was still awake. And so they were trying different things. My mom had a fever. Her blood pressure was low. And so they were adjusting this, that, and the other. And the doctor or the nurses would try to get her to do commands, and she would not respond to them. And I would say something to her, and she would listen to me. And I was like, you got to listen to them. They're trying to see how you're doing. You can't ignore them, Mom. And so they had it to where when they saw that Mom was following my commands, even so much point where I had the TV on and I was asking her if she wanted to watch TV, and she nodded her head yes, and I would ask her different shows she wanted to watch or listen to, and she would nod or shake her head no or whatever. So she was responding, even helping me pick out the show she wanted to listen to. And the nurse was seeing this, and she's like, she's following your commands. I said, I know she is. And she's like, well, we've got her down to that she's not responsive, but she's like even picking out her own show. And so I would sit there, and Mom would listen to the TV, and I would watch it with her and interact with her and stuff. And she was responsive to me. And when my daughters would come in, my daughter had given her a hug, and she said, I'm giving you a hug, Grandma. Can you feel it? And my mom nodded yes. And Mom yawned, and I said, are you tired? And she nodded yes. And so then my daughter, when she left, she told my mom that she loved her, and she said that my mom had mouthed back to her that she loved her, and or tried to mouth back to her. And so there was times I'm like, with the TV on, and she would, shake her head no, and doctor would ask her to move her foot, and she would let it sit still, and I'm like, Mom, you need to move your foot. And then she would do it, and I'm like, the doctor's looking at me, and it's like, she's used to me. She's just used to me. And so I try to explain to them, she needs to respond to them, but I'm her safety. I'm what she knows. She knows my voice. I'm her go-to. And so July 3rd, they took her off of life support. And she was responding. She was talking to us. She was being very hilarious. It was like somebody coming down off of, something, it's the sedative or whatever. And she had a very funny sense of humor and laughing and making jokes. But she was hallucinating a little bit. And that, of course, they said could stem also from the medication they were giving her, plus also coming off of sedation and everything. So we interacted with her and stuff, and she was very responsive. They were trying to get her to do a swallow study so she could eat. She was able to drink water and eat ice chips, but then they decided because she wasn't very awake all the way that they didn't feel safe giving her something. Um, so, um, so anyway, they talked about doing a feeding tube and stuff, and of course, my mom was not into feeding tube. She had expressed to us in October that she did not want a trach put in if that was the case, and not to put her on a feeding tube. She didn't want to be a vegetable. And so we had the talk of what to happen if mom needed to go back on the machine. Do we have a DNR in place? You know, this, that, and the other. So we talked to palliative care and went over a few things. And so in this time frame, my mom is having very restless nights. She's coherent and she's interacting. And I was very disappointed in the way some of the staff at the hospital treated mom. And I was very upset about how the acknowledgement of her disability needed to be amplified. So let me back up a little bit. Before my mom was off life support and everything, I'm a very big advocate for people, but I'm a very huge advocate for my mother. And people always think that if somebody's blind, you have to yell at them. And my mom had told the doctor while we were at the hospital, she's like, I'm blind, I'm not deaf. I can hear you. And the doctor just looked at me and I'm just like, don't look at me. And I told mom, I said, well, she's got a mask on, mom, so she's talking mask. And she goes, oh, well, then I'm sorry then. And the doctor just looked at me and I'm just like, hey, it's true. She's not deaf. But I was confused and concerned because they didn't have it anywhere marked that she was blind, or it wasn't really amplified, if you will. So people would come in and they would just start doing things to her or something, or just start doing stuff, even like drawing her blood, and just saying, I'm going to draw your blood, but then not let her know what they're doing. And or they'd come in and they just start, we're going to rotate you in bed, or get you cleaned up, and they're just doing it. And then I'm looking at them going, hold up a minute, my mother's blind. You cannot just come in and just do that. You have to let her know what you're doing. She's in a strange place. She doesn't know your voices. You're doing things to her. She's scared to death. And why isn't it acknowledged that she's visually impaired? Because they're like, oh, well, we didn't know. Let me put you up in this bed and cover your eyes, and you can be completely healthy. That's fine. But let me cover your eyes and start doing a bunch of stuff to you and not tell you and see how you like it. So I talked to the doctor in palliative care, and I was telling her, because we had wrote on the board then visually impaired on her dry erase board. And the secretary was very nice and kind and made a fluorescent sign, and they hung it on the outside of the door. Basically announce yourself when you come in, visually impaired. But I felt like she needed to have an armband bracelet. You got one for fall risk, you got one for allergies, stuff like that. There needs to be something put into place. You need to have something posted above her bed. You need to have something attached to her, because she's not always in the room. She leaves and she goes for x-rays or something. Those signs don't follow her. She needs to have an armband. She needs to have some labeling. And so the palliative care was like, well, they need to have it displayed on the door, before you come in. I said, it is displayed on the door. She said, well, I didn't even notice it out there. I said, that's my point exactly. And she was like, well, we'll definitely have to get, something. I said, well, they need to have a band on her. I said, when they come up, you need to touch the patient. You can't just have your band sitting over there next to you by your screen, scanning it in, saying, oh, this is the patient. Go touch that patient. Acknowledge that patient. Double check that patient. Because, I picked that armband off the floor I don't know how many times, but she also leaves the room. And I said, you have to come over and touch the patient. If you touch the patient, then you're going to see that band on her arm. Oh, wait a minute. Where's the band on her arm? Where's the band on her arm that has her name and all her information? She didn't even have a band on her arm. She had an allergy band. She didn't have an identification band. And I said, it's over here by their computer where they scan it from when they need to. But they would acknowledge that if they would come over and touch that patient, there's no band on my mom's arm. So she just got back from having a CAT scan done with no identification on her arm and no identification on her stating that she's blind. Nobody knew that. Unless whoever took her relayed the message, oh, by the way. So they get a band for her arm that says visually impaired. And then they get, it's red, bright, red. And then they get her armband that has her name and everything on it, and they put it on her other arm. And so she's got her allergy bracelet and her visually impaired bracelet on her left arm and her identification on her right arm. And I'm like, that makes me feel better. And they have a sticker they put on her bed, and it was, the palliative care doctor was like, that's very smart, and, to do. And it's like, I don't understand why you guys don't have protocol in for this anyway. Even like people that are hearing impaired, you can't tell me that my mom is the only blind patient you have or you've ever had. Why don't you have an SOP or protocols into place for this? Why don't you already make these armbands as identification? You're worried about everything else. That is a big deal to this patient. And so the patient advocates had come in, and I had talked to them because she said the palliative care doctor wanted them to come talk to me because I had a lot of really great ideals. And so, needless to say, my mom had all this displayed in her room. She had the band on. Then the band fell off of her, and I came in, and her bands were off and sitting on the table across the room. And I was infuriated. She had went to get another CAT scan in and had no identification on her. And I went up to the nurse and I said, is there a reason why my mom's bands are off? She said, yeah, they fell off. They were too big. Well, when are you going to put them back on? I just haven't had a chance to yet. Okay. Well, my mom, in the meantime, was down getting a CAT scan done with no identification on her. So, needless to say, my mom gets back into the room, and the nurse, I called palliative care doctor and the patient advocate. I was infuriated. And they came in there and spoke to me and asked me what the problem was, and I explained it to them. And I pointed over to them where her bracelet laid, and my mom was not in the room. And so when my mom came in, they put everything back on her and whatever, but the band kept sliding off, and it would go down the her the cords that she had on her hand, her blood pressure cuff or her oximeter or whatever, and it just didn't seem like it was a big deal for them to acknowledge that it was just hanging there. It wasn't even on her anymore. It slid down. So, I'm like, this is not cool. So I said something again, about, making sure you put this back on her. This is important. My mom is blind. She does not know what you're doing. People are just coming in and doing things. They're just whopping her around everywhere, pulling her up in the bed, rotating her, cleaning her, poking her. They took her blood and it startled my mom, and my mom jerked her arm. And the nurse was like, I need you to sit still. And I'm looking at her, I said, you need to let her know when you're going to poke her. I mean, she can't see you. And so had the nurse, one of the nurses was like, I love this, what you've done with this visually impaired stuff. She said, I'm going to have to steal this ideal if you don't mind, because I have a patient that just came in that's next to your mom's room. Well, not direct, I don't know if it was directly next to my mom's room, but close to my mom's room. She didn't tell me where. Let me clarify that, because I don't want to make it sound like she told me where. She had another patient basically that was also visually impaired, and there was no signs, there was no acknowledgement of it, or whatever. So she went and copied what they had done for my mom, the band and all of that. And she's like, that is a great ideal. And I'm thinking, why has it not been thought of? I don't understand. I don't understand. I said, people take so much for granted. When you walk into the room, you've got tunnel vision, or a lot of times you're caught up in the moment of doing your job, and your job is very important. But it's very important to be able to have the identification of your patient first and foremost. You have to touch that patient and verify you come in and what's your name and your birth date. Well, you know what? Don't bother asking them when they're not coherent, if you don't come in and acknowledge that for them. So when somebody is not capable of speaking for themselves, or when someone is visually impaired and incapacitated to a point where they're not able to communicate their needs and their wants or their necessities, it is your job, especially as a caretaker or a nurse or a doctor, a medical person, anybody that comes in contact with a patient. It is your job to be that patient's everything. You need to be their everything, their voice, their eyes, their feelings of, are they comfortable? Do they look comfortable? Is their neck all crooked and hanging? Are they got all the right tools that they need to be able to access, you in a case of emergency, or with my mom being visually impaired, the nurse call button was not working for her. She couldn't operate that. So one of the other nurses was like, well, we have a call button that is specific, where we can put something on there for people that are difficulty, finding it or being able to push it. Awesome. So she brought that into my mom. That's wonderful. I'm glad you have something as important that put into place, because if you didn't, somebody of my mom's situation or something similar that is not able to push that button on the other, machine or whatever to access the nurse or call button, it could be very life-threatening. So I'm so glad that she, volunteered and put that into place. But why wasn't that something already thought of? Why isn't that something already? Because regardless if they're visually impaired or hearing impaired or mentally impaired or, whatever, add the sickness being in a hospital for a reason, go ahead and make it easy for them to begin with. Go ahead and have this button available. If it's a special kind of button for people that have difficulty, pushing the button, when you're sick and you're in a hospital, it's difficult. Then you add other things on top of it, and it's sometimes almost impossible to be able to do. So, having said all that, that's a very big frustration that I had in the hospital. However, there were so many nurses and doctors and just even the cafeteria staff lady got to know me, and just was so wonderful, and they were very caring and giving and understanding to mom, but it was those few that, once they learned that mom was blind, or they came in there and I pretty much tell them the story about how some nurses and doctors or whomever would do da-da-da-da-da to mom or whatever. And even knowing that they were part of that group of people that I was referring to, I never called them out, but I would tell the story and talking with them. And it was amazing watching how they changed. But it's, and I have to say, sometimes when you get into an emergency situation, or you're in a hospital setting, or you're busy trying to help people. I told the nurse and the doctor this. I said they are so understaffed. You almost need a department specifically to make sure that people that have specific kinds of needs have those certain kinds of needs that are outside of the normal treatment of the medical spectrum, if you will, that they're there for. There should be departments and protocols and things in place already. But if there's not, there needs to be more. I mean, back in the day, before technology got so out of hand, if you will, on a lot of things, it's trying to replace human beings. But also, too, they are expecting nurses and doctors to do everything. Nurses were even emptying the trash in the rooms. I not one time, until I went out and asked a cleaning person to come in to sweep mom's room, had I saw a cleaning person in my mom's room for the whole time I had been up in the hospital. The nurses were the ones that were emptying the trash bags. And I looked at her, and one of the nurses, I was like, why are you emptying the trash bags? Don't they have housekeeping for that? Or, whatever for that? And she was like, this is just something that we're supposed to do now. And I'm like, well, that's not right. I mean, I understand people need to help out, on occasions, because I know, the cleaning staff or whatever, sometimes get held up in different things because, things happen. It's a hospital. But when you're a nurse, or you're a doctor, or you're a special care responder or whatever, obviously, first and foremost, that patient should be your priority. But if you are understaffed and you have, let's just say, now mind you, my mom was in ICU. So you're in ICU and you have patients that are, okay, well, for instance, this nurse had 2 visually impaired patients. They both have certain needs that needed to be met beyond the scope of their medical conditions that they were there for. It was an additional. Visually impaired, it is a big deal. Hearing impaired, it is a big deal. Communication, even if you had people that were amputees, or people that were maybe not as big in the big words or understanding, or had learning disabilities, or maybe somebody that just, was sick and not well. Either way, you got these nurses that are coming in, and they're, to the most point, eventually, some of them I had noticed, now I'm not saying everybody, gets a certain rapport about them on routine, what they're used to doing, or what they've been showed to do, and it's gotten comfortable. They had a Hoyer lift in there that could lift my mom up, which some of the nurses used because she was like, oh yeah, it's so much better. And it was so much better on my mom to use the Hoyer lift. But some of the other nurses were like, oh no, that's just too much trouble. That tears my back up. Da, da. I'm like, it's a mechanical Hoyer lift. Where it's a machine that does it for you. So I didn't understand how it was troubling them, but it was so much easier for my mom to use the Hoyer lift. But only certain nurses did that. Some nurses would just come in and they just did whatever. They had a set schedule. Well, I'll be back in a couple hours to check on you. If you need anything, here's the button. Other nurses were in there all the time checking, And I get that because your caseload is different, But this one nurse had 2 patients that were visually impaired, both in ICU, and she was the main nurse for both of them. And giving, you can't. Back in the day, they had multiple nurses. You didn't just have one nurse on several rooms. You didn't just have one nurse doing everything and then also coming in and bagging the trash up. The time that nurse is bagging that trash up is another time that she could be in another patient's room asking them if they need anything. Or talking to them, or talking to their family, or having conversation, or whatever, or taking a minute to breathe. Because they're running around ragged. And I've watched so many things in the time span. I've seen one nurse. she dropped a needle on the ground, a syringe on the ground, and and evidently didn't realize she did. And it was full of, I'm not for sure what it was full of, but I know what I think it was, but I'm not going to say. But none here lists. She didn't realize she did it. And so she came back in, and I said, I didn't know if you realize, but you dropped your syringe over there on the floor. And I said, I went ahead and picked it up and disposed of it into the disposal container. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I didn't realize that. Thank you. Or there's blood on the floor, and they just leave it there. They don't realize there's blood all over my mom. And I'm like, could you guys come in here and clean this up? Can you clean her up? Or they'll come in and drop something on the floor and then pick it up. And I'm just looking at them like, oh my gosh, what am I witnessing here? And it wasn't all of them, but it was a select few. And, it just amazed me on how much of a routine that it is to be busy. But it's that much more of a routine to be busy that you don't realize, sometimes to no fault of their own, the negligence of accidents that get left behind. Had somebody picked up that syringe full of what I believe it was, could have been very deadly. Blood on the ground, blood on the patient, or whatever. It's like, I had one nurse, she really infuriated me. When we first got there, they were doing shift change. Okay, I didn't know they were doing shift change, for one, because we just came over from another hospital, and my mom was getting another bag of blood transfusion and this, that, and the other. And, well, they had one of those PureWick things on Mom. And the invention of those are nice, but they're not logical for everybody, because the way they're made to a certain contour of a certain magnitude, if you will, that people of certain sizes or contour or even medical reasons, it doesn't do the job. And so anyway, my mom had an accident, and the PureWick did not do what it needed to do. So my mom was sitting there, and she's like, I feel wet. And I told the nurse, I said, my mom needs to be changed. And the nurse turned around and snapped at me, and she said, we're in the middle of shift change right now. Okay. My mom's sitting in her urine. Hello. And I get, and we ran into this a couple of times with shift change. I understand your shift change is very important, and this goes again. And by all means, I'm not bashing any medical person. My hat, I salute you. I too am from a medical field. When shift change comes, they have a one-track mind of communicating the information of all the patients that they have in a certain length of time, and a certain length of notes, and they got to remember this, and this, and they got this and this and this to do, and they got to do it in a certain length of time in order to break shifts, because they got to go home, because there might not be any overtime allowed, or you might not be allowed just to stay after a certain time, so you got to cram it all in and get it in so you can go. But also too, you'd probably, you just pulled a 12-hour shift and you're tired, you want to go home, whatever the case may be. I don't care if you're doing shift change. If my mother is sitting in her urine, get your ass over there and change her. Plain and simple. That's the way I look at it. Because that's all a part of, I don't know, being human? I mean, how would you like to sit in yours? That's just my thought. Or my mom's blood pressure was like going down dramatically and her machine was beeping. And I went out there to try to find my nurse and I couldn't find her. So I found another nurse and I was like, I need somebody to come check mom's machine. Her oxygen or her blood pressure has dropped. And I said when it gets to a certain level or whatever and stays there to come and get them, because it's important. And the nurse was like, well, we're in the middle of shift change. And I'm like, okay. And I just looked at her like, and another nurse was like, I'll come and look for you. I'll come and look and see what's going on. I'm like, thank you. That is what I mean. My mom's life was there. Yours is just a shift change. My mom's was a life change. Because her blood pressure dropped dramatically. And so, nonetheless, it got taken care of by a nurse. I don't even know who she was. And I thank you. And so anyway, this is all going on. And so by the time we get to the second or third night of my mom being off life support, my mom had went to interacting and laughing and cutting up and being kind of really hysterically funny, but communicating with us, where she was having restless nights and was just very, her anxiety level was just off the hook. And so they had given her some anxiety medicine, and I feel like the anxiety medicine was actually making it worse. And it would be to the point where we didn't get to sleep at all. My mom was just all over the place. And she was hollering and yelling and trying to get attention, but yet she was also just making noises. And she was saying she was in pain, and she kept saying that, she didn't feel right, that her chest was hurting. And then they were like, they did EKGs on her and stuff, and she ended up just having like heartburn. And so by the fifth day, my mom was not even able to talk. She was just making noises. Her delirium had gotten severe. Very, very severe. And she was not vocal to be able to talk. She was just making noises when she would try to talk and making sounds. And they had talked to us about doing a short-term hospital to like a rehab to help her get better for extended care. But my mom was not getting better, and I was not going to put her in a strange hospital that I could even stay there with her like I needed to. I wasn't going to do that to her. And I was not going to set her somewhere just to send her to a strange place with nobody around her to die. And I said, my mom wants to die at home. Maybe we should talk about hospice. Because by this time, Mom did not want any feeding tubes. Mom did not want a trach. So Mom needed to eat. She was getting whatever bags of whatever they were putting through her IV. So we talked about hospice briefly, because then the nurse was like, or the doctor was like, this is true, and we can send her home. They got all the equipment and stuff. Um, but would she make the ride home in the ambulance? Because the ambulance was not equipped with the level of oxygen she was on. And I said, I do not want my mother dying in the back of an ambulance. What do we do from here? What do we do for my mom? She is worth more than being a machine. And we discussed palliative care on what to do. And they were going to put her on a morphine drip every 15 minutes and lower her oxygen 10% every hour until it was in God's hands. So that was July the 8th. And I could not stay there at the hospital. I had been there the whole time, but I could not stay there for that. I was afraid that if I stayed, I would not be able to function and stand up. And that I would be laying beside her. I would not be able to handle it. So my youngest daughter, my sister, and my brother-in-law stayed. And my daughter, who is 24, she would call me and give me updates, or I would call her and ask her. And she had called me first thing in the morning and told me that they had removed everything finally off of her, that she was breathing on her own, and she was comfortable, and they now were just letting her be her. They had removed all the tubes off of her. They removed all oxygen off of her. Everything was off of her. It was just her. And she survived another hour. And then my mom passed away at 8:53 on July 9th. And I miss her so much. I miss her so much. I'm still in the house. My mom left me the house. Everywhere in this house, it's just so hard. And I keep waiting for my mom to ring the bell, or, I was constantly in there checking on her, asking her what she wants to eat, or helping her get up and trying to go to her portable toilet. And even though it was a couple steps away, she had to have help getting to and from it. And, because she lived in her bed. She lived in audiobooks. Audiobooks was her life. And so whoever does audiobooks, please know that you're a godsend to those that that really depend on them. And don't stop being you, because they do make a difference for people. They do. We had her funeral on the 16th. And my mother looked beautiful. My daughter had got her a red velvet crushed dress, which was so my mom. She had asked my mom when she was in the hospital, hey, Grandma, she was talking about, my daughter's engaged to be married, and she's like, hey, Grandma, you want it to go buy a red crushed velvet dress you can wear? And Mom's like, oh, yeah, I would like that. Well, my daughter was fortunate enough to find a red crushed velvet dress. And so my mother had that on. And my sister had made some earrings for my mom. And the flower company had done a beautiful spread for my mom, and it was just so hard. At the end, when everybody actually, it's all kind of a blur, parts of it. At the end, I want to say the end. I don't know because I don't know who all was there. My daughter had brought a chair over to my mom's casket and set it in front of my mom's casket and told me to sit down and stay there as long as I needed to with my mom. And I laid my head down on my mom's chest and I sang a song to her that she always sang to us as kids. You are my sunshine. But just the first verse, the chorus line of it. And I told her how much I loved her. And I just laid there, my head on her chest. I gave her a kiss. And I always had this thing with my mom. With my mom being blind, I would always announce to my mom when I was leaving the room. I would always say, I'm leaving the room, or I'm walking out of the room. And I'd be in the habit of saying it so much that I was starting to say it to my daughter. When I would walk out of a room, I'm like, walking out of the room. She looked at me, she's like, okay, Mom. But when I stood up, because I was like, I got to get up, make myself get up, or else I'm not going to ever want to leave my mom, I'm going to want to lay here with her. And I looked up at her, and I got up, and I said, I'm walking out of the room. I'm walking out of the room now. And the morning that my daughter had called me to tell me about my mom, I always got up, and my oldest daughter lives here with us, and she works two jobs, and she gets up and leaves for work about 9. So I always make sure that I'm here in the house, because sometimes I was sleeping out in my camper, and because my daughter would help me take care of my mom at night, and I would come in between 9:15 and 9:00. Well, the morning that the next day, the day after my mom passed away, not the morning of, I got up to come in the house to take care of Mom. And I stopped myself. And I said, oh, I forgot. My dad's taking care of my mom today. He's got her today. And it was just kind of appropriate, that she had died in between 9:15 and 9:00. Because that was the time I was always coming in to make sure that, unless I was already in here otherwise. Now I try to look at it that way. My dad's got her now. My dad's taking care of her. I took care of her long enough for him to come back and get her. And so July 9th, my mom passed away. July 16th, the following Thursday, was her funeral. The following Thursday after that, July 23rd, was my dad's birthday. The July after that, the following Thursday after that, I was interviewing for a job. Um, and because I have to work. My mom was my day to day everything. So now I'm, looking for a job, and my car is messed up. So I got to figure out how to figure out what's wrong with it. It's making a noise. I don't know. It's a strange noise I haven't heard before, and I know a little bit about cars, but I don't know. I'm kind of thinking it might be one of my pulleys. And I was looking at it the other day, and one of them, the tension one, looked like it. I don't know if it's the tension one now. I think it was. Looked like it was moving, wobbling a little bit. But it was making a noise, and I put new brakes and rotors on it because I had those. Actually, I ordered those when my mom was in the hospital, so they had been sitting here for a while. And I hadn't had a chance to put them on because obviously I was with my mom. So I went and put those on. So I got all those new, but I got to figure out what this noise is and get it fixed. So right now my car is sitting, and I'm alternating with my daughter. But when I get a job, I'm gonna have to be able to get back and forth to work. So it's just it's heavy. And then when my mom was in the hospital, things at home got kind of neglected because I wasn't here to take care of things, and we had some storms, so I've got like 4 or 5 trees and big branches and stuff I got to cut up that have fallen on the ground. We've got a little bit of property here. They have fallen on the ground, so now I'm going to figure out how to get those cut up. And I got the weeds have overtaken, and I got to figure out how to get those taken care of. And I know that sounds silly to some people, like, that's nothing. Well, the weeds have kind of taken over a little bit to where they're sticking out in the driveway a little. But also, too, trying to figure out how not to fall apart. Because everything I do reminds me of my mom. She was so much of my life. My whole life, she's been my life. We always were together. We had a business together. We'd karaoke together. One time I was working, and I worked so much, and I was moving. And my mom moved me while I was at work and unpacked all of my things for me and put them away while I was working. And I would have to call my mom to ask my mom where my stuff was at, because she was one that unpacked me. And she's we've just always been together. If we weren't on the phone together, we were together. And she was my matron of honor when I got married to my ex-husband. And I'm trying so hard to stay strong. But inside, I can't even describe how I feel. And if you've lost a parent or a loved one, or have went through anything, my heart goes out to you, because I've had some tragedies in my life. I've talked it very candidly in a lot of my podcasts and things I've been through. When I lost my grandson, when I lost my dad. Not to belittle any of them, but this is my mom. This is my mom. And I just I remember so many memories in this home. This used to be my grandparents' house before my mom bought it off my grandma after my grandpa dad passed away. So mom just wanted to kind of leave it in the family. And so this house is the only place, if you will, that's been my foundation of, consistency. And my grandparents had it, there was an in-ground pool, and there was always cookouts and get-togethers and playing badminton or playing volleyball or croquet and horseshoes or always something fun going on, laughter. My mom had it. There was always get-togethers, holiday dinners, Easter egg hunts, wedding receptions, bridal showers, baby showers, lots of happy memories, lots of laughter and moments. And I don't want to be the stop of that. And I want to be able to continue on having all the laughter and the get-togethers and the fun and keeping this house a home. And I always tell my kids, home is where your mom is. My mom's everywhere. My mom is everywhere. And there's things that make me smile and laugh, and some things that just, when I sit and actually look at the realization of the finale of it, that, my mom's not coming back. My dad's not coming back. But they're everywhere. They're everywhere. And they are the biggest part of me. And I miss them so much. But at the same time, my mom didn't deserve to suffer anymore. She didn't deserve to lay in bed every moment of her life living in an audiobook. She deserved to be able to go outside and have the sun on her face or the wind blowing through her hair and being a part of get-togethers. And, she would get left out because she didn't have the strength to go, or people just didn't understand how limited it was for her to be able to participate, or to feel included. And I just know in my heart of hearts that she is the healthiest and happiest she's ever been in her whole life right now. And I found this I hope that I didn't cut my audio off. Sorry, I just clicked on something. So I found this picture post that I had screenshotted a long time ago. And it was from my mom. And it was right after the tragedy of my grandson passing away and everything. So this was in 2016. And it says, "For the first time, I feel the words 'I love you' are not good enough. Though I love you, I very much do. You make me so proud and amazed on how strong you are, even when others have hurt you beyond words. We have always been there for each other, cried together, laughed together, and even watched Charlotte's Web together on a lonely holiday. Your amazing was giving all, though some don't appreciate it. For when someone needed you, you were there. Through my blindness and other serious illnesses, you're always there for your dad and me. The only daughter that respond to every hell-bound pain and sorrow. I, as well as Jean, which is my dad, have gone through. My point I am making is you are a loving and giving person. Now as you are walking through hell beyond reason, let me reassure you, you are not alone, as we are right there with you as well. You are not a monster that some feel you are, but a warm, giving person. You are not perfect, but who is? Your bad side could be melted with a tenderness if anyone cared enough to try. Stay strong, my sweet daughter. God has a plan, and He is using you to be a part of it. Don't let anyone stop you now. You've got this. I love you. Believe it, and things will overcome your heartaches and disappointments that you bear. Love, Mom." I read that, it's like, thank you, Mom. I needed that. So, my journey now is changed. I don't know the direction that I'm going. I just know that I'm going in a direction. And I do have plans to do video podcast. I'm hoping that it would be my next one. And then I would like to have some people that I know, some guests and different subjects and stuff talked about. I know in a lot of my podcasts I talk about things that are very triggering and heartbreaking and crying, and I'm trying to I also want to show a different side of me, because I am I do like to make people laugh, and I do voice impersonations and impressions, and I've got a very I've got a sense of humor. And I was mom's entertainment all the time. And I want to bring that side out for other people to be able to be a part of, because life is more than being triggered. Life is more than being full of tears and pain and hurt, because laughter true laughter is very hard to come by. When you are actually laughing to the point where it's real and your sides are hurting or your stomach is hurting from laughing so much, and it's real, and you feel the laughter. You feel the happiness from the laughter. That's what I want to bring to the table. That is what I want. That's what I want to give to everybody, because that's who I am. And I'm still doing my my art and my things that I make and stuff, and Um, I also write poetry, but I've also been working on my music and writing songs. And I posted a song that I had wrote. It was my writing, but I had to do voice and music with it from AI because I don't have anybody to play music with to bring the song to music life, if you will. But I've got a lot of songs that I have wrote that I want to share, that I want to bring out there. I feel like that they speak volumes, not only on my own personal life, but I feel like they are very relatable. And I have been considering just winging it, and just I don't know. I might end up doing them a cappella. I don't know. My mom was a musician, and my family were a very music inclined family, and my mom was a songwriter and played music, and my dad did, and my uncle and or my uncles, lots of my family were very musically inclined family. Um, I always loved to dance, and I would go karaoke with my mom and stuff, and she got me into doing that. And I was in an all-girl glee club in high school, and um, I guess I just took a lot of it, just I'm going to say not really for granted, but didn't really give it much consideration. But then I started turning my poems into songs, and that's really brought a lot of life to me. Um, Music is very strong, and um, it definitely is powerful. So that, and of course, getting my car fixed, and some other things around the house, and a job, and just seeing where my next breath takes me. Um, but I am doing everything to keep myself in check mentally and health wise, and doctors and my counseling appointments and medication I'm supposed to be on. Everything is good. So, yeah, that's where I'm at right now. But I just wanted to take a moment to touch base with everybody and to update everybody where I'm at. And, in case you wondered what happened to me, here I am. I just had a lot of going on with mom, and just I don't want to say my heart wasn't into my podcast. It's just my heart and my mind were everywhere else. So, but I am going to close out for now. And if you are going through something, I've lost someone or going through a tragedy in your life, 988 is the suicide prevention helpline. Please reach out to somebody. I am a self-harm survivor and a suicidal victim survivor. And I take that very seriously. And if you are somebody that is going through something good in life, please do everything you can not to feel guilty that something good is going well in your life, or feel like you don't deserve it, because you do. And if you're going through something at all, whether it's good or bad, just remember that the world is a better place with you in it. And you do make a difference by being here. And while our journeys and our lives are not always known, sometimes the journey is what is most about the important part of the destination, if that makes sense. I made this sign one time, and it said, "Life is made up of 2 dates and a dash. You are my dash." and that speaks volumes. So sometimes in life, you just got to take the leap of faith, build your wings on the way down, and fly, soar. And even if one of your wings are messed up, doesn't mean that you can't still be the best you can be. Because not all angels are white, and not all wear wings. And I always say, sometimes you just got to wing life one flap at a time. And on that, I'm going to close out. And if you have given your time out in your life for me, as I always say, it's the one thing in your life you can't get back is your time. And if you've dedicated it any way towards me, I appreciate it and can't even express how grateful I am for you. Because it's the one thing in your life you can't get back, and you felt enough of me to share it with me. And on that, I am eternally grateful. So, on that, I'm going to go. And I hope everybody has a safe and blessed day. Good night.